Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today, I'm going to be comparing and contrasting my 2020 presidential election prediction to see how accurate I was to my 2024 presidential election prediction for this election between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. So we have the two maps that we will be comparing. But before we get started, make sure you guys are subscribed, click the bell so you don't miss out my content, press the like button, share this video. If you are interested, don't forget we do have memberships. You can find the links to that in the description section. So let's begin or start off with my 2020 prediction, and then we'll compare it to my 2024 prediction for this election. So back in the last election, I had Joe Biden winning the state of Pennsylvania by a lean margin of around 2 percentage points. Now I was off. He only won it by 1.2%. And the main reason why I had Biden winning the state by a lean margin was because it was considered his home state. Obviously, he grew up in this state. Obviously, we know him as Scranton Joe. He had a lot of name recognition. I thought he can connect to a lot of the voters. Also, we had COVID, and a lot of people were displeased or unpleased with Trump's handling of the pandemic. So, therefore, I thought Biden was clearly favored to flip Pennsylvania. And then I had Joe Biden barely winning the state of Michigan by a tilt margin of just around 1 point. I actually underestimated Joe Biden's support. He won it by nearly 3 points, 2.8% on election week. So I did underestimate Joe Biden in the state of Michigan. He won it by a lean margin instead of a tilt one. And then I had Joe Biden winning Wisconsin by a tilt margin of under a percentage point. I was accurate. Now, for the exact margin, I don't remember what the exact margin was, whether it was 0.3 or 0.5, but I did get it right that it was a tilt margin, but I did underestimate him in Pennsylvania. And the main reason why I had Wisconsin voting to the right of Pennsylvania, because in 2016, that's exactly what happened. Wisconsin was the reddest Rust Belt state of the three, and it happened again in 2020. But I did have Pennsylvania voting to the left of both Michigan and Wisconsin. That did not end up happening. I was slightly off. It actually ended up being Michigan that was the one that voted to the left of both Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. So this is where I was at in 2020 with these Rust Belt states. I underestimated Biden in Michigan. I was kind of a little bit accurate in Pennsylvania, but I still slightly overestimated Joe Biden's support. But I was really accurate in Wisconsin, as it did only go to him by a narrow margin of under a percentage point. And then as for Virginia, I had Biden winning it by a likely margin of somewhere in between 8 to 7 points. He actually ended up winning it by well over 10 percentage points. So I did underestimate Joe Biden's support in the state of Virginia. And I also underestimated Joe Biden's support in Colorado. He won it by a solid blue margin, safe Democrat, by 13 points. I had him winning Colorado by close to 9 percentage points, similar to Virginia by a likely margin. It turns out I was wrong. I underestimated him by around 4 points. Therefore, it was actually solid Democrat. I had New Mexico likely for Joe Biden. He ended up winning it by 11 percentage points. I had him winning New Mexico by around 8 points. So I also underestimated Joe Biden's support by around 3% in that state. I had Donald Trump winning the state of Texas by around 7%. He won it by 5.5%. So I underestimated Joe Biden's support in the state of Texas by 1.5 percentage points. But still, in terms of the margin and not the actual percentage, I did get Texas right because the margin was realistic. It was likely, and I also had it likely for Donald Trump as well. Meanwhile, as for Florida, I had Trump winning it by a lead margin of 3 percentage points. That was pretty spot on. He did win it by somewhere in between 3 to 4 percentage points. So I wasn't really off in Florida at all. And as far as North Carolina goes, I actually had Donald Trump winning that state by a tilt margin of almost 1 percentage point, which is kind of spot on, but slightly underestimating him because he actually won it by more than just 1 point. On election week, Trump won it by 1.6, so actually slightly underestimated the former president in the state of North Carolina. Now, in terms of overestimating and underestimating, it really depends on the state because, for example, in Michigan, I underestimated Joe Biden, but in North Carolina, it was the exact opposite. I underestimated Donald Trump. So it really depends on the states. And as for Nevada, I actually had Joe Biden winning this state by a tilt margin of 1 percentage point. He ended up winning it by greater than that, similar to Hillary Clinton's margin in the state in 2016 of 2.3 I believe. So I did slightly underestimate Joe Biden in Nevada, and actually a lot of polls suggested it would be closer than that and Trump had a shot, but still polls in Nevada tend to overestimate Republican support. So I got that off by probably about 1%. That was my polling error. And as for the two Sunbelt states, Arizona and Georgia, I actually had Donald Trump winning the state of Arizona by a little over 1 percentage point. You can argue that's a lean margin. I'll just leave it in as tilt right now. So I did overestimate Trump's support in Arizona. I just did not see how Biden can win that state because no Democrat, keep in mind, had won Arizona and it's such a long time, which was the main reason I just could not see Biden winning the state. And the main reason why he did so was because of the independents, the undecideds on election day. And the biggest reason why was because of the John McCain style voters. People on the right call them neocons, anti-Trump Republicans. And a lot of them broke for Biden, mainly because he was seen as more of a moderate candidate, even though he was still a Democrat. And a lot of those people voted for Mitt Romney and McCain and partially Trump in 2016, but flipped to Biden in 2020, and Trump was seen more as an extremist candidate. And then as for Georgia, similar to Arizona, I just could not see how Joe Biden would flip this state. No, keep in mind, no Democrat has won Georgia in a long time, since Bill Clinton, I believe. And just in the previous election in 2016, Donald Trump won Georgia by around 5 percentage points. So that would take a huge swing for Joe Biden to flip the state, which I just did not see him getting a 6-point swing in favor of his direction. That would be enough to flip the state. I just cannot see a 6-point swing to the left in Georgia. And guess what? I was wrong. It ended up happening, and Joe Biden won Georgia by 0.3%, just 10,000 votes, an extremely narrow margin. And I had Trump winning the state by actually 3 points. So I underestimated Joe Biden in the state of Georgia by 3 percentage points. I had it lean for Trump, and it ended up being tilt for Joe Biden. So my final prediction in the 2020 election was 279 electoral votes for the incumbent president to Donald Trump's 259 electoral votes. Realistically, on election week, it ended up being 306 for Joe Biden instead of the 279 that I had him winning it by. And Donald Trump got way less than 259 electoral votes. So I was off by 2 states, Arizona and Georgia. I was off in those states. I had him going to Trump, but it actually ended up going to Joe Biden. So I did get 2 states incorrectly, and I actually got more states incorrectly, and based off of the margins themselves. Yet again, I underestimated Joe Biden in Michigan and Colorado and Mexico. I overestimated Joe Biden in North Carolina, and it really depends on the states. So this was my 2020 map. I got Arizona and Georgia wrong. And now you compare this to 2024. I actually think Trump is going to flip at least 5 swing states, being Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. The main reason why is because these states typically vote in one direction. They never really break or split apart. For example, if one Rust Belt state goes to either direction, the rest will follow. If Trump gets Wisconsin, he's probably going to win the rest, Michigan and Pennsylvania. They never really split apart, yet again. So, I also have him flipping Arizona. The majority of pollsters, even the most left-leaning one, has admitted that Donald Trump is on track to win Arizona. And in my opinion, as of right now, he's going to win it by 2 to 3 percentage points, a lean margin. And as of right now, I can now characterize Nevada tilt for Donald Trump. Republicans are doing extremely well in terms of the early voting. Now, like I mentioned in the 2020 election, polls typically overestimate Republican support in Nevada. I was off with the margins. I still had Biden winning it, but still by a tilt margin of a little under a percentage point, and he ended up winning it by 2.3%. So maybe I could be overestimating Trump again. And in Colorado, I have it likely for Kamala Harris by around 10 percentage points. And as for New Mexico, I have it likely for Kamala Harris by a margin of somewhere in between 7 to 8 or maybe even 9%. This is a border state, so therefore I think it can be actually closer than expected, but still not enough for Trump to overcome the votes. In Albuquerque, that's a stronghold Democratic county. And then you have Texas. I have it likely for the former president in this election, winning it by around 8 percentage points instead of the 5.5 that he won it by in 2020. This is a border state. Immigration is a losing issue for Kamala Harris. She can't address the border whatsoever. And as for Florida, in this election, Republicans are doing extremely well in terms of the early vote, not only by in person, but mail-in as well. They are winning Miami-Dade County. Miami-Dade County, guys, is a blue county. The Democrats literally rely on that county. If they lose Miami-Dade County, they're going to lose Florida by probably double digits. Like, Miami-Dade County flipped to red to DeSantis and Mark Rubio in the 2022 midterms, and they won by 13 and even 20 points. So I won't be shocked if Trump does manage to get double digits in Florida, but as of right now, I'm going to play it safe. I'm still going to give it to him by a likely margin, but by close to 8 to 9 percentage points. Cuban Americans and Hispanics are really shifting towards the right in this state, mainly because a lot of them flee the communism from Cuba. And as for Georgia, the main reason why Biden won it was because he got high turnout among African American voters. BLM played a major factor in this state. And same thing goes for Minnesota, Minneapolis. What happened to George Floyd really pushed those suburbs here to the left. And I think in this election, the women vote could actually get bluer than where it was in 2020. But I did have Minnesota likely for Joe Biden in the last election. I forgot to actually go over that state. And the main reason why I characterized Minnesota likely for Joe Biden in 2020, and I got it right, by the way, but I had him winning it by 6 instead of 7, so I underestimated by 1 point, was because of what happened to George Floyd. I think people were just sick of Donald Trump's leadership. And as for New Hampshire, I also forgot to go over that state. I actually had Joe Biden winning it by a lean margin of 4 percentage points in the last election. I was wrong. I underestimated Joe Biden in this state. He won it by a likely margin of 7%, similar to Minnesota. This state's actually getting bluer, so that caught me off guard. And as for both these states in this election, I actually have Minnesota likely for Kamala Harris. I have her winning it by 5 to 6 percentage points, mainly because Tim Walz is on her ticket. He is the VP. He is literally the governor in the state. That's a benefit for Kamala Harris. It's going to help her electorally with that home state advantage of the vice president. And same thing goes for J.D. Vance from Ohio and Donald Trump, even though you can literally argue that Donald Trump is more popular than J.D. Vance. And as for New Hampshire, I have that likely for Kamala Harris in this election by 6 to 7 percentage points. This state is getting bluer. There's a lot of college-educated voters, and that group specifically really pans out well for Democrats. And Tim Walz, as his time as the governor of Minnesota, really spent most of his time focusing on education. So I think that can correlate to a lot of those New Hampshire college-educated voters. And as for Georgia, in this election, I have Donald Trump winning this state by probably 2 percentage points. That's enough to characterize it as lean for him. I just don't think there's enough enthusiasm among the Democratic base in Atlanta. The main reason why Biden won it was because of the Atlanta suburbs, the metropolitan area in that state. And I don't think Kamala can really do the same thing. I think Joe Biden really got lucky. And as for North Carolina, I do think that Donald Trump will win this state by probably a couple points as well, just like in Georgia. Now, in terms of the early vote in this state, it's not looking the best for Republicans, but still, it is pretty neck and neck, and Donald Trump is more than likely going to win this state, getting 312 electoral votes. And as for Virginia, the last and final state, as of right now, I have it lean for Kamala Harris, winning it by a little bit over 4 percentage points, closer to 5, but that's still considered a lean margin. Actually, a recent poll just came out yesterday showed Kamala only up by 1% in this state. And the governor here, Glenn Youngkin, who's extremely popular, who endorsed Donald Trump, is really trying to help Donald Trump carry this state, or actually make it, competitive, even though Trump is more than likely not going to win this state. And keep in mind that when Biden was in this race still, right before he dropped out, Trump on the RCP averages actually had a lead of 0.4%. So maybe Trump winning this state is not actually as unrealistic as some people may think. And we go back to Glenn Youngkin. He's trying to mandate paper ballot voting only. And honestly, I think that can really go to Donald Trump's benefit, and the state will be called much, much faster. Same thing goes for Georgia. Brian Kemp has also passed election day laws in which all absentee ballots have to be submitted by 8 p.m. and won't be accepted any later. So Kamala is stuck at 226 electoral votes. So this is my 2024 prediction as of right now. It is not finalized. I want to make it clear. This is not final. And you compare it to 2020, I had the Democrats at 279 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 259. And in this election, I have it way better for Donald Trump, 312 electoral votes. So if you want to pause this video and see my 2020 prediction, this was my 2020 presidential election prediction. And you compare it to right now, this is my 2024 presidential election prediction. So this is what I want to do in this video, basically compare and contrast to see in which states did I overestimate Biden, in which states did I overestimate Donald Trump. In the states where I underestimated Joe Biden was in Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and Michigan, and New Hampshire as well. And the states I overestimated Joe Biden were in Pennsylvania, and that's pretty much it. And they also underestimated Joe Biden in Colorado as well. So that's pretty much it. One last final reminder to subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss out my content, press the like button, share this video if you are interested. Don't forget we do have memberships, you can find the link to that in the description section. Thank you everyone for watching.